Okay, Charlie, we'll start from scratch. I'll just open the drawing from the beginning. You've probably already figured this out, but they have all of this text and everything else is turned off. So I just go to View, Thaw All On All, so that I see all this content. And the first thing I'm going to do is just start erasing stuff that I don't need. So I'm just going to erase all this text and all these block areas that they have over here. I see that that's going to take something out of the area that I don't want to, so I'm going to hold down on the shift key and select that to unselect it. And then I'm going to select this over here. Yeah, they've got it set up as blocks, so probably need to do some exploding first. So I'm going to escape out of that. Let's do a AXPLODE. I'll just explode some of this stuff, and then I can erase it. This stuff over here and this stuff over here. Let's see what this line is. That is Z construction. And it looks like it's something that was pulled over to the side there. It's kind of overlapping this, so I'm going to erase that too. This looks like a house pad template that they've got sitting over here by itself, kind of out of the project area, so I'll erase that. I'm probably going to freeze this text. Let's just go to freeze by layer pick. And I'm going to pick the things to freeze here. That looks like it got rid of that text in the layers. I'm going to go ahead and freeze this hatch. And must not have picked it. Okay. So based on your email, they want you to stake the road, the erosion and sediment and storm. Okay, the road is this red line, and you're correct. If I select it and mouse over it, I've got northering and easting, no elevation. So if we want to be able to stake the grade for them, we would need to elevate that line, turn it into a 3D before we set points. We could also just pick points on where these contour lines cross and have those as our stake points, but if they want stakes every 50 feet or however they want it, that's not going to work for you. As I mentioned, we could just pull this edge of road line out into a separate drawing, and the erosion and sedimentation control and the storm, and put those into a drawing and bring them into our Carlson Surf CE, and then we can stake anything we want out there in the field without even creating points. We'd just stake to line, which I'll try to show that to you in a separate video. Really, honestly, it's the best way to do it, and that way you don't have to worry about creating points, and you can kind of work on the fly out there in the field with the contractor staking points wherever they need them. And so I'll show you how to do that, but this is kind of the old way of doing it. Creating points in your drawing and then exporting them out to your data collector and then just staking those points. Let's see, I'm going to erase whatever this is. Looks like it's just a sheet or something. I'm not sure what exactly is the erosion and sedimentation and the storm. I assume the erosion and sedimentation is the limits of disturbance they have here. And this S is, I've got it as a utility, but I didn't think it was storm. I thought it was a sanitary sewer. Although they don't have any manholes on it, so it might be storm. The other thing I noticed is that these uh, swale lines, they have elevated, and they've got them at 1161 on that one. I think some of them I saw at 1162, and for our purposes we're going to have them set to 0. That one happens to be 0, but so we're going to have to change the elevation of those because we want to use those as break lines, because we're going to have to create our own tin to get a surface to do the points. So I'll show you how to do some of this stuff. I'm not sure what this is. I'm just going to erase it. I don't know what that is. Let's see. I think that's telephone, electric, limits of disturbance. But I'll show you how to do the road and then everything else. I think you could do on your own just based on doing it following along with kind of what I did with the road. And this, get rid of that. All right. Well, first thing I'm going to do is, let's isolate this road, because I know from looking at it earlier that it's not a continuous polyline, so we need to connect it. So I'm going to do a view, isolate layers, and then I'm going to pick this road and isolate it. And if I pick something on it, we'll see that it's not all connected. So I'm going to do a join, and the source object, and then select objects to join. I'll just do a crossing and join everything up, and now it should be all one entity. And then I'm going to do a view and restore layers and bring everything else back. Okay, and then we needed to de-elevate, set these swales to 0, so I'm going to isolate those. I think this one was at 0. Well, see, it's not even, yeah, that one's at 0. But I'm going to do edit and a change elevations, and I'm going to set them at absolute and 0, and then I'm going to change layer, no, and I'm going to select the entities, and we'll just select all these and make sure everything is 0. So now I see everything is 0. So view, restore layers. Sorry, I don't have a very fast video card, so it's taking a long time for things to refresh. It's a new computer that's got a built-in video card. I need to get a separate video card. I've noticed that these pads for these houses or whatever they um, are at a fixed elevation, and they are also finished floor elevation of 1167. If you're not staking those, it's not going to matter in our surface. So basically, I'm just going to leave those alone. But if I were staking these, I would probably explode these and get the whatever this pad is elevation so that I could use that in my surface. So for our purposes, I'm just going to do the swale and these designed contour lines and then make my own surface. So I'm going to do a view, isolate layers, and we'll do the swale, our index and intermediate contours. I should have selected the road line here also. And then I'm going to shrink wrap this just to give me a boundary. Draw shrink wrap entities, I think it is. And let's see, cross gaps, we'll do low. Let's do a medium. We'll just do a 2D polyline. And we'll just select everything here. And that gives us a line around the outside of our design contours. And we can use that to do a boundary when we do our happens to be boundary. So okay, good. So now I'm just going to create a surface from that. So I'm going to go to, well, first of all, I'll go to survey because I don't think you have civil. So I'll make sure we're working in the same module. We'll go to surface, triangulate and contour. Under triangulate, I'm not going to draw anything. The only thing I want to do is write this tin file, and I'm just going to overwrite the one I've already done, but you would just do new and give it a name, and I'm just giving it the same name as the drawing except without the one in parentheses. So I'm just going to overwrite that. And I do want to use an inclusion exclusion boundary, which is the shrink wrapped entity that we just did. I'm going to ignore zero elevations for our 10, but it's going to use the zero elevation lines in our for our break lines. Everything else I'm just going to leave off because really all we're doing is creating the surface. So under contours, we don't want it to draw contours, so if you have that checked, uncheck that. I'm not going to do any labels, so I want that turned off, and I'm not going to do any kind of a selection filter or anything like that. So really the only thing we want to do is write this file and use an inclusion exclusion and ignore zero elevations. And then OK, and we're going to overwrite that triangulation file. So now it's asking me to select the perimeter polyline or enter for none. We're going to select that shrink wrap polyline we just created, and now it's asking me to select the break lines, points and lines to triangulate. So I'm just going to select everything on the screen. And now we should have our tin file. Now we're not going to see it, but it wrote it to a file. So to view it, I'm going to go to the 3D viewer and surface file, and let's take a look at what we created here and see what it looks like. Oh, I didn't mean to rotate it. I'm going to throw some exaggeration into it probably. Just a little bit. I'll change it to maybe, I don't know, 4. this down so we can look at it. Okay, so we see our road surface, and we see where the houses and stuff sit, kind of stair-stepped, and it looks pretty good. I don't see anything spiky or anything like that that looks bad. So I think our surface looks pretty good, especially for if we're just staking that road. So now that we have the surface, we can go to view and restore layers. You could do a 10 from these existing contours and merge the two, and that would give you the ability to stake anywhere on this project area and be on grade. But for this project, I don't think it's necessary. I mean, the design contours start here, so this road really is kind of already existing here. Doesn't look like they're changing anything, so from tying into this existing road up to here is not really changing. Alright, so this is a little bit more difficult with just the survey module. If you had the civil module, that would give you the 3D data, and we could do a 3D entity by surface model. But since you don't have this full civil suite or survey and civil modules, I'm going to have to stick to the survey module only. And basically what we're going to have to do is create our points first and then elevate them by surface model. So it becomes a two-step process instead of a one-step process, but we can still go through it. So let's create our points first. Okay, so it's under Kogo, create points from entities. And that gives us this dialog box. We can select our symbol. We can choose not to even draw points if we want. We can separate the attributes into different layers. I'm just going to use points. We can prompt for elevations, but we don't have anything, so we can do the elevate by surface model here instead of doing the elevate later. Since we already have the surface model, we'll just check this dialog box and it should prompt us for the surface. Point numbers, automatic point numbering, starting with point number 1. We can prompt for a description at each point. I'm just going to make the description the same for everything. Description is just going to be RD. Use block name as description, blah blah blah. So we've got all these different things we can set here. And entities to points, we're going to do polylines, lines, arcs. We're just going to select a single entity anyway, so we can just kind of ignore this. We definitely want polylines selected because we're going to select a polyline. And now it's going to ask us for the surface model to use to elevate the points, and we're just going to use that cabins 10 file. And it's asking me to select the entities. So I'm going to select the edge road entity, and we see that it put points on all of the breaks, but that's probably not what you want to do. It's just all the endpoints anywhere there was a break, which, again, in the data collector you could stake a line between say 35 and 36 and stake points anywhere along that line you want without actually creating points. And since they're now elevated to the proper elevation based on that surface, we can see that 1168 there, and it crossing that 1168 contour. You could very well do it that way, and it actually even put our radius point in for these curves out here. And since that's outside of the surface, it's zero elevation. These are all zero because they aren't within that surface model, that surface cut off here. So anything outside that surface is going to be zero, so you would have to elevate those manually, or just, since you know they're not in an area where the grade is changing, you just wouldn't give them a grade difference. So that's one way of doing it. If you wanted to do points, say, every 50 feet along that line, we would have to do it a different way. So I'll show you how to do that also. So I just went in and erased all those points that I had created out of the tin file and everything, so that we can go in here and actually do and interpolate points. And I'm going to interpolate interval along entity, so I can tell it, say, every 50 feet. And the same, got the same thing: symbol, points, automatic point numbering, prompt for elevation, label elevations, locate on real z-axis, prompt for description at each point, description for points, and just RD, break entity at points. That would chop it all up. Create points at endpoints. Usually I do that. Reset the interval at the endpoints. Yes or no. So as you see, this one is not going to let us elevate based on the surface as we do it. So this one's a little bit different. It would be nice if it had that command in there, but we will have to do it separately. So basically it's asking me for the entities to interpolate points, so I'm just going to select that polyline, and we see that it did points every 50 feet, and they're all zero, so we would have to elevate these. And it's actually going to have the same points that the other one command we did, because it's doing it at all the endpoints, but it also is doing them every 50 feet. So before we had this big long gap between here and here where we had no points. That's just another way of doing it. So then we would have to go to survey under set point elevations by surface model, and then it's going to ask us the surface model we want to use, that cabins, and then it's going to select points from screen, group, or by point number. I'm just going to do by number, and I'm going to tell it all, and that should do everything. Set point elevations by surface, and then the length of the elevations to the surface model. So yes, so if that surface model changed, the points are automatically going to change their elevation. So now we see that those points that we created all have elevations on them. So again, if you have the civil module, all of this is very simple, kind of one command. There's lots of utilities for creating points on entities and turning 2D entities into 3D entities based on surface models and all that. So, but this should get you going in the right direction for creating points. I mean, you can also just create points by going to our points, draw locate points, and just screen pick a point and just turn your snaps on, entity snap, and you can just set it to endpoint or node or whatever you want, nearest, and pick points anywhere. So if I do endpoint here, I can set a point there, and pick another point on this utility and set a point there. and set a point there. You know, just keep picking wherever you want points. Now, of course, none of these have any elevations because they're outside of that surface. Now, if we wanted elevations, we would have to create a surface of this from these existing contours that they've given us.